Rebecca Fox had been away from home for the weekend, visiting her family in a nearby town. Upon her return earlier than expected, she decided to play a harmless prank on her fiancé, who was busy in their bedroom. She tiptoed to the room, giggling in excitement, and quickly ducked under the bed to hide. She waited patiently for her fiancé to come into the room so she could jump out and surprise him. However, as she lay there, she froze in terror as she heard the sound of footsteps approaching. It was more than just her fiancé. Her heart racing, she tried to stay quiet and still, hoping that it was just her fiancé and whoever else was present in the room wouldn't notice her under the bed. Suddenly, she heard her fiancé's voice. But his voice was accompanied by another voice that she had heard before. Her mind raced with fear and confusion as she realized that someone else was in the room with him. She tensed up, her eyes wide in shock, and tried to control her breathing while bracing herself for the worst. She couldn't believe that what she once thought would be a hilarious prank that would scare him now felt like something out of a horror movie. It was at this point that Rebecca realized that her joke had taken an unexpected and unpleasant turn. Rebecca lay motionless beneath the bed, trying to quiet her breathing. She could hear a pair of footsteps approaching, and her heart raced with fear. As the footsteps drew closer, she could hear the distinct sound of high heels clicking against the hardwood floor. The sound was all too familiar, and Rebecca's mind raced with the possibilities of who it could be. Just as she was about to give in to panic, the pair of people spoke, and Rebecca recognized the voice immediately. It was someone she never expected to see again, and her mind raced with a million questions as she tried to process what was happening. Rebecca Fox, a young, vibrant woman, lived a seemingly perfect life. With a fulfilling career, a loving family, and a bright future ahead of her, she had everything she ever wanted. Her world turned upside down when she met Andrew, the man of her dreams. Unlike the jocks and macho men she had dated in the past, Andrew was different. He had a nerdy side and a deep love for his family, which made him even more attractive to Rebecca. She felt like she had finally found her soulmate and was excited to spend the rest of her life with him. However, fate had other plans in store for her, and one day, something happened that would shake her world to its core. Andrew and Rebecca met for the first time at a summer camp, where they were both working as counselors. From the moment they saw each other, they felt an instant connection. They spent their days bonding over their shared love of music, movies, and adventure, and their evenings talking for hours under the stars. As their friendship deepened, Andrew and Rebecca started to realize that they had developed feelings for each other. They started to spend more and more time together, going on long walks, exploring new places, and trying new things. Soon enough, they were inseparable, holding hands and sneaking into each other's houses to spend time together. Their teenage love never faltered, and as they graduated high school and went on to college, they were as devoted to each other as ever. They made sure to call each other every day and to visit each other as often as they could. They supported each other through the ups and downs of college life and cheered each other on as they pursued their dreams. Fast forward several years, and Andrew finally worked up the courage to ask Rebecca to marry him. He planned a romantic dinner at their favorite restaurant and surprised her with a beautiful diamond ring. Rebecca was over the moon with happiness and screamed, "Yes!" at the top of her lungs. They hugged each other tightly, knowing that they were meant to be together forever. Rebecca had fallen head over heels for Andrew, and much of this was due to his strong sense of family values. For Andrew, family always came first, and he had a deeply ingrained bond with his parents. In fact, his mother, Anna, was an active participant in their lives, frequently organizing Sunday lunches where the whole family could come together and catch up with each other. These lunches, filled with laughter, stories, and delicious home-cooked food, were a highlight of the week. However, one such Sunday lunch brought with it the first sign of trouble. It was during this seemingly perfect family gathering that the family dynamic began to show cracks. Andrew's father, who was usually the life of the party, seemed withdrawn and uninterested in the conversation. Anna, who normally had everything under control, appeared to be on edge, snapping at everyone and looking uncharacteristically frazzled. The once vibrant and close-knit family dynamic suddenly felt strained and uncomfortable, leaving Rebecca with a sense that something was amiss. Everyone was gathered around the table, enjoying a delicious meal, Andrew and Rebecca were seated across from Anna and Andrew's father, Trent. As they ate and chatted, Rebecca couldn't help but notice something that made her feel uneasy. When Andrew expressed his gratitude to Anna for the food she had prepared, he leaned in and kissed her on the mouth. While this tradition was not unheard of in some families, there was something about the way Andrew and Anna interacted that felt strange to Rebecca. Despite her discomfort, she didn't want to say anything and disrupt the family's pleasant meal, but she had no idea that she was being taken for a fool. Just a few weeks later, Rebecca learned that Anna wasn't actually Andrew's real mother, but merely his stepmom. This put a new spin on the kiss she had seen them exchange at the dinner table. She confronted him about it, but he reassured her that it was just the way they showed thanks. He would kiss his dad or his real mother the same way. Rebecca decided to brush the incident off, but she was unaware of the horrible decisions that she had made. She personally hadn't seen an interaction like that before, and it made her very uncomfortable. Furthermore, she didn't really like Anna so much. She was a very forward woman and would always force herself into her and Andrew's private conversations as if she had to give her input as well. Rebecca found Anna to be a very weird woman, and Andrew didn't do anything to stop her. It was like he welcomed and valued her opinion. It was a strange dynamic indeed, and Rebecca didn't know what to make of it. Sure, they had a close relationship, but this was too close for her liking. The two of them were always laughing at each other's jokes, and they seemed to have some inside jokes of their own as well. Rebecca continued to watch them very closely. Anna took every opportunity to touch Andrew in any way that she could while they were talking. She was bordering on flirting, and it was very unsettling to watch. However, Rebecca didn't know if there was really something there or if she was just seeing things. Andrew certainly wasn't flirting with her, or was he? Rebecca noticed that when Anna touched his arm, he touched hers. There was a frequent back and forth between the two of them, like they were reciprocating everything the one did to the other. It was driving Rebecca to be very paranoid. She didn't know what to make of it. Was she blowing it out of proportion? Rebecca could feel the paranoia creeping in, like a shadow she couldn't shake. It gnawed at her, consuming her thoughts, making her second-guess every glance, every word, every silence. She told herself it was just her imagination, that she was overthinking things, but the unease refused to subside. It clung to her like a wet blanket, heavy and suffocating. If she had believed that time would bring clarity, she was terribly mistaken. Beneath the surface of her otherwise peaceful life, something darker was brewing. What Rebecca didn't know was that her future husband and his mother were plotting something she couldn't yet comprehend. Their dinners together had become a ritual, a regular occasion that Rebecca used to look forward to. But lately, those meals had turned into something else entirely. She couldn't quite put her finger on it, but the air around the table felt charged, like a storm was about to break. Anna's sharp eyes seemed to watch her a little too closely, and Andrew's easy smile had started to feel forced, as if it were hiding something. Rebecca's instincts told her that something was wrong, but she couldn't bring herself to voice her suspicions. Then, one evening, it all came crashing down. They were gathered around the table, the room softly lit by the warm glow of the chandelier above. Rebecca watched as Anna and Andrew exchanged a glance that made her stomach twist. Their hands found each other's, fingers entwining in a way that was oddly intimate for a mother and son. They turned toward her, their expressions unreadable. "We've been planning something very special," Andrew said, his voice bright with excitement. But there was something underneath that tone, a flicker of something she couldn't place. "We're going on a hike." Rebecca blinked, her mind racing to catch up. A hike? That was all? For a moment she felt a wave of relief. Maybe she had been worrying over nothing. But as she sat there, nodding along as Andrew talked about the trail they had chosen, the pit in her stomach refused to go away. Why hadn't Andrew mentioned this before? Why had they kept it a secret, only to spring it on her now? The timing felt off, and the secrecy made her uneasy. The following week passed in a blur of preparations. Rebecca had been caught off guard and had a lot on her plate. Rebecca found herself swept up in the plans, buying new hiking gear and packing snacks, all the while trying to ignore the nagging sense of dread that gnawed at her. She told herself it would be fine, that this hike was just a chance to bond with Andrew's family. Maybe she'd even get to know Anna better, find some common ground with the woman who would soon be her mother-in-law. But as the days passed, that hope felt more and more like a flimsy shield against the growing fear that something wasn't right. Finally, the day of the hike arrived. It was a bright, crisp Saturday morning, the sky a brilliant blue overhead. The air was filled with the scent of pine and earth as they piled into Andrew's car and set off for the trailhead. Rebecca forced herself to smile, trying to shake off the last remnants of doubt. But as they drove deeper into the woods, the trees growing taller and denser around them, her nerves only tightened. The trail was more rugged than Rebecca had expected, winding its way up a steep mountainside. The path was narrow, with thick underbrush pressing in on either side. For the first half of the hike, things seemed to be going well enough. The four of them, Rebecca, Andrew, Anna, and Trent, Andrew's father, moved at a steady pace, the sound of their footsteps mingling with the rustle of leaves and the distant call of birds. Rebecca found herself falling into a rhythm, the fresh air clearing her mind, the exercise calming her nerves. But as they ascended, the terrain became more challenging. The path grew steeper, the rocks more uneven, and Trent began to struggle. His breath came in heavy gasps, his face flushing with effort. Rebecca noticed his pace slowing, his steps faltering, and glanced ahead to see if Anna or Andrew had noticed. But they were several yards ahead, completely engrossed in conversation, oblivious to Trent's difficulty. Rebecca hesitated, torn between catching up with them and staying back with Trent. Finally, she made her decision, slowing her pace to match his. She couldn't leave him behind, not like this. As they continued up the trail, Rebecca tried to make small talk, hoping to distract Trent from his struggle and maybe ease the tension she felt. But their conversation took an unexpected turn when Trent, perhaps tired or simply lost in his thoughts, let something slip. "Sorry about that," Trent said, his voice tinged with regret. He paused, glancing at her before looking away, as if unsure whether to continue. Andrew and Anna have always had a special bond. Ever since she married me, she's been more of a mother to him than a stepmother. They've been through a lot together. Rebecca felt her heart skip a beat. There was something in the way Trent spoke, something unspoken but heavy with meaning. His words lingered in the air between them, raising more questions than they answered. What did he mean by that? What had Andrew and Anna been through together? Was it just the closeness of a mother and son? Or was there something more, something she couldn't yet see? Trent seemed to realize he had said too much, falling silent as they trudged up the final stretch of the trail. Rebecca's mind raced, her suspicions now swirling with fresh intensity. She tried to piece together the fragments of what she knew, but nothing seemed to fit. The more she thought about it, the more unsettled she became. When they finally reached the top of the trail, Anna and Andrew were waiting for them, standing side by side, their faces flushed with exertion and laughter. They didn't seem the least bit concerned about having left their partners behind. Instead, they were wrapped up in each other, their closeness more pronounced than ever. Rebecca watched them, her heart pounding in her chest. The way they stood together, the way they looked at each other, it was more than just familial affection. It felt like a connection that went beyond what was normal, what was comfortable. As she stood there, trying to make sense of the scene before her, Rebecca couldn't shake the feeling that she was on the brink of discovering something terrible. After the hike ending, the paranoia that had gripped her before now returned with a vengeance, and this time it brought with it a cold certainty. Whatever Andrew and Anna were hiding, it was something that could change everything. She looked at Andrew's father, Trent. He seemed to be in his own world. It didn't look like he and his wife were on good terms. Rebecca wondered why. Could it be because he too noticed that his wife and son were a little too cozy with each other? She wished she knew. The whole thing was just so confusing to her. Rebecca's mind spun with a whirlwind of thoughts and suspicions. She couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister lurked beneath the surface of their seemingly happy family gatherings. As the weeks passed, Rebecca found herself becoming more and more distant from Andrew. She couldn't bear to be around him without the nagging doubts clouding her mind. Their once effortless conversations now felt strained, and every innocent touch between Andrew and Anna sent shivers down Rebecca's spine. She felt like there was something going on between them. Even though she didn't want to think about it, she couldn't get it off of her mind. It was always there, lingering. What was she supposed to do? Finally, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, Rebecca mustered the courage to confront Andrew about her suspicions. She found him in the living room one evening, staring blankly at the television. "Andrew, we need to talk," Rebecca said, her voice trembling with emotion. Andrew turned to look at her, a hint of concern flickering in his eyes. "What is it, Rebecca? You seem upset," he replied, his tone gentle but guarded. Rebecca took a deep breath, steeling herself for what she was about to say. "I can't shake this feeling that something isn't right between you and Anna," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. Andrew's expression hardened, and he rose from his seat, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "What do you mean? Anna is like a mother to me. There's nothing inappropriate going on," he retorted defensively. The tension in the room was palpable as Rebecca struggled to find the right words to express her concerns. "I know it's difficult to hear, but the way you two interact, it's not normal. It makes me uncomfortable," she explained, her voice quivering with emotion. Andrew's jaw tightened, and he took a step closer to Rebecca, his eyes flashing with anger. "You're overreacting, Rebecca. Anna has been nothing but supportive of us. I won't let you ruin our relationship because of your irrational jealousy," he spat out, his voice laced with bitterness. Rebecca's heart shattered into a million pieces at Andrew's harsh words. She had never felt so betrayed and misunderstood in her entire life. As tears streamed down her cheeks, she realized that her once perfect relationship was crumbling before her eyes. And in that moment, she knew that things would never be the same again. The innocent prank she had planned had unearthed a truth far more devastating than she could have ever imagined. In the aftermath of the incident, Rebecca found it difficult to trust Andrew. However, over time, he worked hard to regain her trust, being mindful not to express his peculiar way of showing gratitude in her presence. Things were looking up, and their relationship seemed to be on the path to recovery. However, one weekend, Rebecca had to go away for work, leaving Andrew alone. This separation would put their relationship to the test and lead to unexpected events. Rebecca was caught off guard by the sudden call from her boss, who requested that she make a presentation on their company's new product in front of some potential clients. It was short notice, and Rebecca was feeling overwhelmed. However, she decided to take it on and confided in Andrew about the situation. Andrew was supportive and advised Rebecca to do her best to impress her boss and the clients. With Andrew's encouragement, Rebecca gathered all the information she could about the product and prepared her presentation. She was nervous but confident and knew that, ultimately, she would deliver an impressive presentation that would win her boss's approval. Rebecca was not too thrilled about having to take up the responsibility of her colleagues, but she knew that this presentation was crucial and couldn't be postponed. She spent her time packing her bags and making sure everything was in order before heading to the airport to catch her business-class flight to London to showcase her company's latest product. However, unbeknownst to her, something sinister was happening back at home, a deception that could potentially turn her world upside down. Despite the excitement of the presentation, Rebecca couldn't shake off the nagging feeling that something was not quite right. Upon arriving in London, Rebecca received a call from her husband, Andrew. During the conversation, Andrew offered words of encouragement and reassured her that everything would go smoothly. Rebecca felt more confident after the pep talk from her husband, but was curious about why he was so motivated to get her out of town for the weekend. However, her curiosity was soon satisfied, as she received a surprising piece of news that shed light on Andrew's eagerness to have her away for a few days. Rebecca had been working hard on the presentation for weeks, but she wasn't ready to present it herself. She knew she had to impress the clientele to secure the deal. However, her boss suddenly informed her that the presentation had been moved up a day, and she would have to present it on Saturday instead of Sunday. This had unforeseen repercussions. This meant that she had a lot less time to prepare than she had anticipated, and she hated being rushed. Nonetheless, she knew she had to pull herself together and give it her best shot. On Saturday, Rebecca executed her presentation with precision and confidence. She spoke clearly and confidently, using well-crafted slides to illustrate her points. The clients were impressed with her work, and she felt satisfied with the job well done. After the presentation, Rebecca was relieved that she could finally go home and relax with Andrew. However, she had made one fatal mistake. She had forgotten to tell him that she would be coming home a day early. As a result, Andrew was not at home when Rebecca arrived, and she felt disappointed and lonely. She realized that her work had taken a toll on her personal relationships, and she resolved to be more mindful of this in the future. With Andrew not home yet, she decided that she would surprise him. She made herself some food and put things back exactly where they were. Eventually, she heard his car come into the driveway, and she quickly ran to the bedroom, but she had no idea that he wasn't alone. With a heart full of anticipation, she crept into the room, carefully placing each foot on the ground to make no sound. As she reached the bed, she bent down and slid under it, her eyes sparkling with excitement at the thought of surprising her fiancé when he walked in. As she lay underneath the bed, her heart beating rapidly, she suddenly froze in terror upon hearing the sound of footsteps approaching. The sound was not just of one person's footsteps, but of two. It indicated that it was not just her fiancé, but someone else as well. Her mind raced with fear and anxiety as she tried to remain quiet and still, hoping that whoever was present in the room wouldn't notice her hiding under the bed. Suddenly, she heard her fiancé's voice, but it was unclear whether he was alone or not. The uncertainty only added to her fear, and she couldn't help but wonder who else was in the room with him. It was hard to believe that she had once considered this a harmless prank to scare him. Now, it felt like a scene straight out of a horror movie. She wondered who it could be, and her mind raced with all sorts of scenarios. However, her fear was short-lived, as she heard the sound of two people right by her bed. One of the voices sounded oddly familiar, but she couldn't quite place it. As the conversation grew louder, she realized that the familiar voice belonged to someone she never expected to be here. Her heart raced as she struggled to process what was happening. Questions flooded her mind. She was ready to confront them. Rebecca's heart raced as she strained to make out the words of the conversation happening just above her. Every fiber of her being urged her to remain hidden, to avoid whatever confrontation might ensue if she were discovered. But the curiosity gnawed at her, demanding answers to the questions swirling in her mind. Who was with Andrew, and why did their presence feel so wrong? Conflicting emotions warred within Rebecca as she grappled with the realization that her innocent prank had led her to this moment of intense uncertainty. She cursed herself for ever concocting the idea, for allowing her playful nature to overshadow the potential consequences. Yet, despite the fear and confusion coursing through her veins, a spark of determination ignited within her. She refused to cower beneath the bed like a frightened child. She needed answers, and she needed them now. There was an unknown woman standing in their marital bedroom, talking to her husband. She dreaded to think what this woman was actually doing there in the first place. All Rebecca could do now was wait. It was agonizing. And then she saw. Andrew had removed his jacket, and it landed on the floor right in front of Rebecca's eyes. Things were now getting very heated indeed. Was this what she thought it was? It seemed like the woman had momentarily left the room. Was her husband getting undressed? Rebecca could not take this anymore. She needed to show herself before it was too late. And then she heard it. Her blood ran cold. "So, what did you want to speak about, Anna?" Andrew asked in an annoyed tone. "It's Rebecca. I don't think she'd be right for you. I practically raised you as my own son, and I don't approve," the mother-in-law declared. Rebecca was ready to interrupt them when Andrew spoke. "She's my wife. You have no right to say this. You should leave. She'll be back tomorrow, and I need to make sure the house is ready for her." Rebecca sprang out from underneath with tears streaming down her face. "How could you?" she said, her voice quivering. Anna jumped back, not expecting to see her. Andrew was equally surprised, but he had redeemed himself by standing against her words. They asked her to leave the property. After that day, the couple didn't go to the family lunches anymore. They knew that they only needed each other. That was true love.